Hello and welcome back to the G5 Family Channel. Thanks for clicking in. Today we're going to be talking about Starlink and internet service here in the Philippines. Now recently Starlink rolled out their availability and waitlist map, so we can now see where Starlink service is actually available. It would be easy to miss this on the website because the addition is not overly prominent, but that's why I'm here to help you and show you how to navigate to this new tool. If you clicked into this video, then you probably already know what Starlink is. But for those who may not, Starlink is a relatively new internet service that uses low orbit satellites, providing fiber optic quality, high speed, low latency, broadband internet around the globe. And by the way, I should mention it's also an Elon Musk company who's big in the news with his recent Twitter acquisition. Now, most people would be thrilled to have this quality of internet service in their home or office, but being able to get this here in the Philippines is even more incredible. That is, if or when we can get it. Unfortunately, it is still hard to get Starlink, and in fact, it's still unavailable in most parts of the world. But to put a number on it, Starlink has been given permission to put 12,000 satellites into orbit, and they've asked for permission to launch an additional 30,000. And to date, they have put roughly 2,000 in the sky so far. As a result, their service is primarily concentrated in North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, with a couple of countries in South America. To keep things from getting out of control and to ensure that Starlink can provide service to those who paid for it, Starlink actually prevents your service and your dish from working at a location that is anything but the address you registered with Starlink. In other words, your dish and service are only going to work at the location you gave to Starlink. Now, up to this point, to get service, you would just go to the starlink.com, enter your home or street address to find out if service is available in your area. And I've been monitoring this for my parents who live in a, sort of a low population area in Southeast Texas, and usually get the quote-unquote service is not yet available until more Starlink satellites are placed. But if I jump over to another map that I've been monitoring, we're seeing something very interesting developing above the Philippines. Now let's jump over to my other screen here, and you'll see here that I have starlink.com pulled up, and in order to go to the actual map, you see this little dot, this little map direction arrow. We're going to click on that, and that's going to take you to this screen. Now I'm going to pull out just a little bit. Now this is sort of coverage of the whole planet here, basically. Now the way this works, the key is the bright green is the 100% up and running available map, and actually I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. And then the darker green areas, and I'll go ahead and zoom into the US here, are on the wait list. Okay, so this is important because I'm actually a little surprised at how much coverage there is in Canada and versus the US. But Elon Musk is, I think, from Canada actually. But anyway, this gives you an idea. So the way you would normally go about, checking availability in your area would be to type your address here. Now I'm going to wait to do that for just a minute because I want to show you a couple of things. So let's zoom back out, and we're going to zoom over here. Now we're going to go to the Philippines, and we're going to click on this. Now this is totally grayed out. So you'll see here that according to the starlink.com map, that service is not yet available in the Philippines. But here's where it gets fun. So there's this other map here called the Starlink satellite map, and this is really cool. It's interactive. So right now I've got it centered on the Philippines. Now all of these white dots represent Starlink satellites. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the video, there's 2,000 satellites in the air, and that's actually, as of that writing, there could be more by now. I know that they're firing rockets into space, on a weekly, monthly basis at this point. But anyway, so I'm going to zoom into Philippines here, and here's what's interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 satellites hovering, 6 if you want to count some of these out in the periphery, satellites that are hanging out over the Philippines. And while there probably needs to be more than that for them, really it's a capacity-based type system. So you can have coverage. Your neighbor could say, hey, my Starlink works, but the map could tell you that it's not available. Well, the reason is because they've maxed out the capacity for that satellite. So they're waiting until they get some more satellites up there to give more access to the users. So this is why I'm excited. The fact that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 satellites, with others in close proximity. I'm just guessing that it's just a matter of time until we, have enough satellites floating over the Philippines to finally get service. Now I'm going to jump back to the Starlink map here. And one thing that I find encouraging when I go back over to our part of the world here, and here's the Philippines right here, Southeast Asia, but Australia, the south half is got coverage as well as New Zealand. Now, the reason why I find this encouraging is proximity. So if these guys are already up and coming, then just imagine it's just a matter of time before Southeast Asia, including the Philippines. And I don't know this, I have not read this, but I would speculate, and I believe it's safe to guess, that the Philippines and Southeast Asia is an important coverage area for Starlink because of the sheer number of population. So, the user base is going to grow significantly. And now I want to talk a little bit more about the Philippines. If you've watched these videos, you know that we've been in the Philippines almost 5 years now. And when we first arrived here back in 2017, internet service in different parts of the country was better than in other parts of the country. But unfortunately, in the province where I live, the best service I was able to find was cable internet. So, the cable TV company, and internet over coax was up to, the plan that they offered was up to 4 megabytes per second. Now that doesn't sound like very much, but the weird thing about it was it worked. I mean, we were, watching Netflix, and I have a voice over IP phone line to the US. It was working. Now, there were times that it was glitchy. There were times that it was a little bit sketchy, but it worked. And then later, the internet service jumped to 8 megabyte per second and didn't raise the price. Then later, they upgraded their system, and I was able to get 25 megabyte per second, which was fantastic. It was an obvious difference in service. And then now, in the last 6, 8, 10 months, fiber has actually arrived in our city, and I haven't made the jump yet because I've got to pay for the fiber to actually be run to the house. But I can get fiber, and the service plans that they offer up to 100 megabyte per second via fiber, it's only like $50 a month. And that is bundled with your cable TV. Can you imagine getting cable TV and internet for $50 a month? It's pretty cool. So you might ask, well, if you've got fiber, if you've got 100 megabyte per second service, then why are you excited about Starlink? Because guess what? Starlink's going to be expensive. Right now, the pricing structure is, if you purchase the system right now straight up, it's $599, and then your monthly plan is $110 a month. Now, Starlink is not going to accept my exact street address, but I researched this earlier, and I found out that Bacolod City in Negros Occidental, where I live, actually comes up on their system. So I'm just going to click on one of these. Yeah, we'll just click on this one. Yeah, so there's Bacolod City. This is about 50 kilometers, 35 miles as a bird flies from where we live. So close enough, right? So I'm going to click the Order Now button. Okay. Give that a second to process. And here we go. So here's what's cool. Order now to reserve your Starlink. Starlink expects to expand service in your area in 2023. Availability is subject to regulatory approval. Within each coverage area, orders are fulfilled on a first-come, first-served basis. So this $99 deposit, it does a couple of things for you. It gets you on a waiting list. That's number one, because as you see, first come, first serve. And as I mentioned earlier, capacity, user base plays into, they're not just opening it up to 1 million people all at one time. With that in mind, it's a fully refundable deposit. Again, the $99, it gets you on the waiting list, and it does something else for you. If you pay the deposit $99, when service does become available, you actually get a $50 discount on purchasing the equipment. So instead of paying $599, you pay $549. So there's a couple of incentives, a couple of good reasons to go ahead and make the $99 deposit. Now, I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to wait probably until closer to the end of this year, maybe January timeframe to pay the deposit, because even though it's saying 2023, I'm not banking on the fact that it's going to be that quick. And as I said earlier, we have 100 megabyte per second service via fiber. Now, the other reason why I'm excited about Starlink is literally what I just said. Via coax or via fiber, if I decide to buy a property, and this is actually a real consideration, we're thinking about buying property, outside of the city proper, either close to the shoreline, if not right on the ocean, if we can find the right property, the right deal, or as a secondary and also a very appealing idea would be to build on the edge of the mountain where we can also see the ocean from the mountain, and we can also enjoy the cooler air. With a little bit of elevation, the temperatures actually drop, substantially. So, but the main point for Starlink is that these areas might be obscure enough that they're not going to have coax or fiber run to those areas. So Starlink, I pop the dish on top of my house, boom, I connect to the satellite, and I'm in business. All right, so you can see that I'm pretty excited about Starlink. The reasons are pretty simple, pretty straightforward, in that, even in the best highly populated metro areas with the absolute best infrastructure, internet service, power service, et cetera, I believe that Starlink will always compete, very well. And by going ahead and paying the deposit, the $99 deposit gets you on the waiting list and saves you $50 on the equipment purchase. So well worth the consideration. And as I said earlier, if you're considering moving to the Philippines, if you're already living in the Philippines, perhaps you live in an area that you don't have coax, 25 meg, 50 megabyte per second service, or better yet, fiber, maybe this is a good solution for you. So, hit that starlink.com. By the way, this is not a sponsored video. I'm not sponsored by Starlink. I'm just excited about the prospect of getting Starlink service. And so I hope you find this information helpful, and please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.